Ancient Greece wasn't exactly what one would consider a very peaceful area during the period of Classical Greece, which lasted from 776 BC to 323 BC. During this period of time, two major wars took place involving the Greek city-states: the Greco-Persian Wars, or just the Persian Wars, and the Peloponnesian War. Today, we begin with the Persian Wars. The Persian Wars began in 492 BC and lasted all the way until 449 BC. That's 43 years. Doesn't seem that long in the grand scheme of things, but in comparison, the Second World War, the greatest conflict in human history, lasted only 5 years. Imagine a war 8 times that length, and the war was fought between the Greek city-states, mainly Athens, against the Persian Empire. The war began when Greek city-states along the coast of Anatolia, occupied by Persia, rose up against the rulers. Athens gave support to these city-states, which was taken as a threat by Persia, beginning the conflict. Soldiers saw intense, bloody fighting throughout the war. The fighting got extremely intense during mainland invasion, where the Persian war machine invaded with full force. The Greek city-states united together to protect their homeland and fended off Persian invasions. The Battle of Marathon, probably the most famous battle of the war. The battle took place in 490 BC when the Persians attempted to invade Greece at the city of Marathon. The modern Marathon is actually named for this battle due to the fact that the messenger Phidippides ran 26 miles from Marathon to Athens to warn the Athenians, after which he collapsed on the ground and died there. The Athenians were not expected to win this battle. They were a force of 10,000 men facing 25,000 Persians, and yet the Athenians won this battle. They killed 6,400 Persians and only lost 192 men, according to the Greek historian Herodotus. The war ended in a victory for Athens and the rest of the Greek city-states after the Peace of Calais in 449 BC, but the Persian invasions had mainly ended 30 years before. The Peloponnesian War was fought between the Delian League, which was led by Athens, and the Peloponnesian League, which was led by Sparta. Conflicts had been occurring for several years, but the war began in 431 BC and ended in 404 BC. It occurred shortly after the defeat of Persia in the Greco-Persian Wars. The war started mainly due to the fact that Sparta was beginning to feel Athens and the Delian League were getting too powerful. The Peloponnesian War had 3 separate parts, the first beginning the Archidemian War, named after the Spartan king Archidamus, who led annual attacks on Athens for 12 years. The second part of the war was the Peace of Nicaeus, which was a peaceful time between Athens and Sparta. The peace ended when an Athenian commander, Alcibiades, convinced the Athenians to attack the Peloponnesian League. The attack of the Athenians led to the beginning of the third part of the war, the Ionian War, which ended in defeat for Athens, and eventually the defeat of Athens in the Peloponnesian War after the Sparta laid siege to Athens, cut off their supply lines, and caused their civilians to revolt. This led to the dissolution of the Delian League and the crumbling of the Athenian Empire. Sparta eventually would go on to win the war and become the only surviving Greek power. It's impossible to tell exactly how these wars affected our society today. If one were to think about what would have happened if Persia had succeeded to take it over Greece, would Alexander the Great have never taken over almost the entire world? Would great Greek philosophers have ever been able to speak about their ideas? Our society could be entirely different if the results of these wars were any different.